Yes, you are welcome back to this wonderful tutorial. Before we go to props, let us look at the ways by which we write components in React. Actually, there are two ways by which components are written in React. The first way is the class-based component, while the other way is the functional-based component. Now I'm going to look at the difference and similarity between both ways. Actually, the class-based components were the first set of components that came out in React. It has a lot of it's the same way it's written in ECMAScript and it has ES6 class based like it has a complex UI logic. It's a little bit cumbersome, although it still does the same work. It has state to itself. So let me show you how the class based components look like. Now let me take away everything and get the class-based component. This is how the class-based component looks like. It used a JavaScript ECMAScript 6 and class structure. You can see that extends to this component. This component app is extending to this component. It has a render method which is returning a HTML. Actually, this is not HTML. This is JSX, which you have learned previously. So this is the structure of a class-based component. That of a functional component, which we have been using, which is this. This is a functional component. This is how you write functional components. Simple code, easy to read, easy to test. It's just a normal function in JavaScript. So let's look at the differences between the functional component and the class-based component and the similarities. Let me just open my notepad. So you can see that in React, we can write our component in two ways. One is functional and the other is class-based components. So functional component is the easiest way to write a component in React, which I've shown you earlier. Class component uses the ES6 class structure to write components. You agree with me that this structure, the one before this structure, this is how we write a class in JavaScript ES6. Extends, component, and render method. So we move on. The next one, both of them can be used to write components in React. This is one of their major similarities. Both functional components and class-based components can be used to write components in React. A functional component is just a plain JavaScript component. We cannot use states in functional components. So if you look at this code, let me go back again. This is a plain JavaScript function. You can see a function keyword and the name of the function. So this is just a plain JavaScript function, very easy to read, and it is stateless. State means, when I say stateless or when I say state means values or variables. So functional component by default is stateless, meaning it doesn't have a state, neither does it have a value. So let's see what happened. That's the reason they are called stateless components. So you can see that for yourself. Because functional component doesn't have a state, they are called stateless components. On February 16, 2019, React version 16.8 was released to the public, introducing React hooks. React hooks allows us to use states in a functional component. Don't worry about React hooks. We're going to learn about React hooks in subsequent class. So in 2019, February 16 precisely, the React developers team of Facebook decided to introduce a new version called 16.8. That version was when they actually introduced what is called React Hook, which we are using in the modern eras now. So React Hook was the brain, was the function, was the logic behind functional components being used repeatedly because of the state. So what the React Hook does is what? It allows us to use states in functional components. Remember I told you earlier that functional component does not come with a state. It is stateless. But with the introduction of React Hook, we can now use states in a functional component, all thanks to React hooks. React hook lets you use states and other React features without writing a class-based component. So with the introduction of React hooks, we were able to what? Write states in functional component. That means we don't actually need a class-based component, because before now it was only class-based component that had the states. But when React hook came in February 16, 2019, it will not we are not able to write functional components. We're not able to write states in functional components. We're not able to use states in functional components. So that means we don't actually need the class-based component. Although that does not mean that the class-based component is invalid though. It's still going to work. But because of the easy stuff of writing functional components, and because React Hook has made life easy, so I cannot stick with functional component because there's a state now all thanks to React Hook. And in this tutorial, we'll be sticking with functional component. In functional components, you can write less code when compared with class-based component. So you can see one of the advantage of functional components. You write less code, unlike class-based components, which you write more code. Functional components are more easy to read and test because they are plain JavaScript function without state or lifecycle. So you can see the reason why most 95% of developers stick with functional-based component. It is easy to read and test, and with React Hook supporting it with state, that is why it's so popular. Functional-based component is so popular. So that is why I have to introduce you to this topic so that you get confused. So right now, I've explained to you the ways by which we write components. So in our next class, we'll continue with props. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys in the next class.